Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, bringing clarity to optometry business and entrepreneurship. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here on another episode to learn and to grow. As always, I'm so grateful for all the support, everybody who tunes in, who watches, who shares with their friends and family. It really means so much to me, and it's been cool to see the numbers increasing, of numbers of listeners increasing month to month. So thank you, everybody. And after saying thank you, I always have the same request. If you don't mind, if you do take some value from today's episode or any episode that you've listened to, please do share it. Take a screenshot, throw it up on Instagram, tag me, tag my lovely guest. Tell us what you took away from it. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, leave a review, all of those amazing things that you've been doing. So thanks for doing it. And thanks in advance for doing it again if you do. And if you've been listening, you know we are in the middle of March Marketing Madness. I'm super excited to bring this series of podcasts. We have multiple amazing guests, multiple amazing podcasts lined up, specifically talking about marketing and advertising and everything we need to do to grow our business from the ground up. I suppose primarily in the digital world, but really just kind of wrapping our head around all these amazing resources and platforms that are available to us. And today's guest is the perfect person to talk about this. Today I have the absolutely lovely Dr. Sandi Eveleth, who is an optometrist and an entrepreneur. She's been practicing in optometry for over 30 years in all sorts of various settings, but most importantly and most relevant to today's conversation, Sandi also owns her own digital marketing consulting firm that she began back in 2009 to help local small businesses and eye care practices increase their visibility and attract more customers. And she has a wealth of knowledge in everything marketing, whether it's web design, search engine optimization, direct mail marketing, networking, and all sorts of other amazing topics that we're going to touch on. Thank you, Sandi, for joining me on the podcast today.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I absolutely love talking about this. You know, I'm passionate about this. Yeah. You've seen me all over at LinkedIn trying to help our colleagues in learning all about marketing, both online and offline. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Honestly, I couldn't think of a better person, one with just your background, the wealth of knowledge you have in this specific area, but also as an optometrist and somebody, obviously the majority of our listeners are going to be eye care professionals. Although thank you to all you friends out there who are listening, who are not eye care professionals, you still tune in. I love it. Thank you very much. But having that combination in one person here in yourself is pretty amazing. And I'm really grateful for you to join us on the podcast.
Absolutely.
So Sandi, I posted something on Instagram before we kind of started doing these recordings to get the message out to people in social media world and let them know we're going to be recording this series of March Marketing Madness podcasts. I asked some people what kind of things they would like to learn from our marketing experts. And that the most common thing that came up was, I'm a small business owner or I'm starting a new business. What do I need to know? How do I get out there? How do I increase traffic or increase my, number of clients? So that's one thing I think we're going to really focus on in this conversation. This is your wheelhouse, is like step by step from the ground up. How do we build this thing? How do we use all the various platforms? So I'm really going to turn it over to you here. I'm going to let you structure your answer however you like and run with it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And a lot of this too has to do with the introduction that you just made about my career. And I co-owned a private practice for 15 years and the practice is still going. I've left it and moved on to other things, but it's a specialty practice: vision therapy, specialty contact lenses, ortho-K, all kinds of different things that we were putting out there in the world. So that's where I gained a lot of my knowledge, just, rolling up my sleeves and learning how to do it. It's where I started learning how to create websites and, getting into all of that. So the first thing that I really want to get across is the whole, make sure that you have a plan in place. It's that the quote, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. I want to start by talking about working backwards. You want to make sure that you get clear on your minimum revenue goals for your practice. If you've just started out, There are a lot of articles out there about benchmarking what you need to make in order to ensure that a practice stays healthy and continues to grow through the years. In the beginning, it's pretty tough. The first 3 to 5 years are kind of difficult. That's when small businesses can actually fail. We don't want to use that word, but that's when you really have to kick things into high gear and make sure that you've got enough cash flow, understand what cash flow is, et cetera. So you want to make sure that you have an understanding, kind of work backwards. What's the minimum increase in revenue for, when you're marketing? You don't want to spend dollars and throw dollars away at marketing that just doesn't work. So you don't want to pick a number out of the hat. You want to make sure that you understand how much marketing you're going to spend to get each new patient. So we're talking about return on investment of marketing. So one of the things that we learned how to do from another consultant is to make sure that you set up your financials in a way that you understand what your profit centers are, how much money you're bringing into the practice, and what your expenses are. And if you can group that by benchmarks, then you can take a quick look at your financials within 5 minutes, know if you're spending too much money on marketing or not enough in marketing. So the first thing you want to decide is how much, how many patients you need to bring in order to meet the goals for your annual revenue, your monthly revenue, weekly and daily revenue. So how many patients is that per day? And again, we do know what benchmarks we have, but you can't underestimate the value of marketing your specialties. A lot of our subspecialties can increase the amount of revenue per patient that we bring in. So this is where I really niche down, is in talking about how you can actually market your subspecialties. But what I wanted to do is just give you a real quick win right at the very beginning, besides talking about those planning for your financials, is every patient, when you first open up your practice, and you are going to get some patients calling, you want to make sure that for each and every patient that calls, at the very end of the phone call, is to ask that very important question before you hang up. Say, Mrs. Smith, is there anyone else in your home that would like to schedule their annual eye exam? And by asking that question, you're first of all allowing them to demonstrate their love for their own family members. And you're also showing how important it is to make sure they understand that you want patients to come in on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. This is not just to grow your revenues, but it's what we recommend as eye doctors. We want to make sure the patients understand every step of the way, from the moment they schedule the exam, coming through the front door, going through the pre-testing, and in the exam lane, that it's important to use the phrase annual eye exams. So they start to get that feeling. They understand how important that is. And dentists have done a great job with that by getting patients in every 6 months. And we've known that. I've known that since I was a kid, that it was important to come in every 6 months. So another thing you want to make sure that you understand is, if you're coming from a corporate location, you've sort of been in that setting, you've been in a certain mindset, that when you open your own practice, you want to make sure that you understand there is a different mindset to opening up a private practice, to offering subspecialties if you haven't been doing that in your corporate location. And this is something that we learned a long time ago from another well-respected consultant, that he used the phrase, you want to make sure that you're not playing in the wrong sandbox. Don't behave as though you're going to be offering all kinds of discounts just to get people in the door. You don't want to set that mindset to where patients are starting to expect to have the same kind of, discount offerings and 2-for-1s, and unless that's the way you want to set up your private practice. But in order to increase that per patient revenue, you want to make sure that you're setting the stage, that you're marketing for the value and quality of what you offer and what your specialties are, and not that you're setting up, oh, just come in for the discounts, because that's what I've always done when you've seen me over here at this other practice.
Right.
Okay.
That's super important, that what you're saying there about on the private practice side and having the specialties. That's definitely something that we have learned here in this practice. We're focusing on the myopia control, and we're focusing on the dry eye, and marketing those things immediately sets you apart from the people who are not doing it, first of all, but also provides this level of experience for patients that, they haven't been getting before. And then not discounting things or not getting looped into that or stuck in that trap is something that I had a hard time dealing with, to be honest with you, when you first opened. But once you break away from that and you get kind of a little bit more comfortable understanding the value that you're providing, it makes a huge difference for sure.
Well, think about it, because you now own the optical. You now own the product that you're selling. It's not that you're just handing off a prescription. So there's a lot of things that can happen before you even open your doors, as far as training your staff to teach them what it means to have, an all-encompassing, we're all on board with the same ideas. We're all on board with the importance of patient, the special care that you're now going to offer them as a team. And it's vital that you have those 5-minute daily meetings or those weekly meetings in order for your staff to continue to understand what it is that you're providing, what your mission, vision, and values are as a practice. So again, some of this precursor stuff has to be in place before you even begin thinking about marketing your practice. So let me give you a few offline ideas that work really well, that we put into place, and a lot of my clients put into place, that help get patients in the door just to sort of feel that warm and fuzzy of your practice. You want patients to not just see, this online, I don't know who this doctor is. Let's get them to walk through the threshold of your door so they can see how beautiful your optical is, how wonderful your patient instrumentation is, how up to date you are. You have the latest technology. So here's some of the ideas that you can use, whether you're marketing it online or offline, but right out of the gate, have a COVID-friendly open house event where, you get your chambers of commerce involved. You have a ribbon cutting ceremony. Invite, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but invite something called your Dream 100 influencers. These are people in your community. These are leaders in your community that are connected to a whole host of people that would be perfect for your practice. You want to have, the media will they'll cover it, whether it's just a quick article in some newsletter or a blog post, or they might actually have a television crew come out. So visibility. Invite heads of local organizations. If you do any kind of vision therapy, pediatric care, invite principals of your local schools, coaches of sports teams, anyone related to the subspecialty that you may be offering, myopia control, things like that, that they may not be aware of that you actually offer as a subspecialty. So you really want to get both your staff involved and just, brainstorm, write down on a piece of paper a whole host of ideas of who it is that might be leaders in the community that don't have any idea who you are. And all of a sudden, now they're walking through your door and, enjoying some of the appetizers that you may be offering, et cetera. And you're just welcoming them into your home, which is your practice. Some other things you can do after you do that, you start to get, build up some of that awareness in your community, is offer in-office seminars or virtual webinars to educate your community on your specialties and your expertise. Again, it's so easy to become known as the eye care specialist when you offer a specialty. Try to get your staff to tell you what sort of patient frequently asked questions you've had, or even if you were working in a corporate location, think about those questions that patients were asking you on a regular basis and come up with just some, even if it's just a 20-minute quick seminar that you can offer, because we know in the marketing world that a lot of us are offering marketing webinars and seminars, but I don't see locally that many optometrists offering this to potential patients. So it's an excellent way to actually build up some awareness, and you will get media around that. I guarantee it. And if you do have a specialty in your practice, we actually had a news team come out and take a look at what we were doing for vision therapy. They did a whole segment on us. Very, very easy to do. We got on the cover of some local magazine or local newspaper because they had never heard about this before. We just take all this stuff for granted because we're in this world all the time. But imagine most people out in your community do not know what myopia control is. They don't know what low vision is. They may not have ever heard of the fact that there are devices out there that can help them. So again, very easy to get media attention. And believe it or not, people are watching TV. They're actually still doing that. They're listening to the radio. So depending on your demographic, your age demographic, you just try to get out there as much as you can. So still think local media and local marketing. And again, we'll touch on the digital in just a bit. Think beyond, as I mentioned, the typical referral sources. As I mentioned with VT or sports vision, look at your local sports leagues. I happen to be in Tampa, which is known as Champa Bay. We have some major teams here.
Not anymore, since Tom's leaving.
Well, I know we are heartbroken. And you can imagine I'm originally from New England, so I've had my heart broken a couple of times. But we have these are not just minor league teams, these are major league teams. But it doesn't have to be something as grand as that. Look at any of the teams that the school kids are on. Look to the coaches. Look to any of the sports related retail stores. Get that information out there that they will find out that this is the kind of things that you do. And I'll talk to you in just a bit about the kind of language you want to use when you're marketing this. It's not the kind of words that we use. It's the language that patients would use in order to find out. But make sure that you have a packet created with your practice and your personal branding that explains the benefits to their customers or patients for having you as their eye care provider. Again, we'll talk about it in just a bit, but you're not going to use language that just brags about the features that you have in your practice. We have the latest and greatest. You want to talk about the symptom-specific problems that you actually can solve. And, again, really, really brainstorm on the kind of people and places and other local small businesses that would benefit from the specialties that you offer.
That's amazing to, I think even myself, when I think about this type of topic, I'm thinking all about the digital these days, but I think we've skewed so far over, we forget, this more traditional, feet on the ground type of thing, boots on the ground kind of networking type of thing, how valuable it truly can be. And we get bogged down in I got to hit X number of metrics on Facebook ads or something like that. But really, there's still so much value to hitting people right where you live in the more natural, organic way. So really, really great advice. And I think that also, I know we're kind of talking this is kind of geared towards ODs, but everything you've said applies to pretty much any profession, right? I'm thinking about friends who are in finance or who are in, whatever other profession it might be. If you have your own business, ultimately, whether you're an accountant or a lawyer or whatever, these are all things that you can apply, right? Is to get
it
involved.
Right. Everything that we're going to talk about, any kind of local small business, everything that we're talking about is mainly organic, how to do organic marketing. And it really starts with, you have to be found. Your community needs to be aware about why you're different, what's your unique selling proposition, who you serve, what kind of problems you solve, and how to get a hold of you. Why are you different? And like I said, so any kind of local, it's very easy to promote and to market a local small business. It's just, you have to garner that trust. And some of the things that we're going to talk about are exactly doing that. It's getting you in front of people. It's getting them to know, like, and trust you as quickly as possible. And the best way to do that is for them to meet you in person. And then, of course, the second way to do that is to get some video up there so that people can actually see you and start to feel your personality. And, it's great that you also make these podcast videos, because people tend to connect better through video. So I appreciate that as someone who wants to market their own consulting practice.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's a common theme that our listeners and viewers are going to hear now throughout these episodes, is video is the key type of content when we do start talking about digital, right? When you're putting up content, there's nothing better than video. But anyways, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. And part of that is because it's the quickest way to move someone from having absolutely no idea who you are to feeling like, oh my gosh, I now know this person. So the second time they see you or the third time they see you, or if now you're speaking at some local Rotary or some other organization, oh, I saw that doctor on TV, or I saw a video on YouTube. And they might not even realize that you're local until they see you standing in front of a meeting. But the next thing that you want to do, and this is going to set the absolute stage for all of your online marketing, and even if you are marketing with pamphlets, it's the language that you use, it's the copywriting that you use, it's the scripts for your audio podcasts or your seminars or your videos that we're talking about, is you absolutely have to identify who your ideal patient, and we call them either persona or avatar or human, or in our case, just your ideal patients are, because you're going to want to be able to really define the language that we're going to use to attract them. So my advice is always to identify and define 3 to 5 of your favorite patients. And again, if you're starting absolutely cold and you've never had a patient, kudos to you for starting in a private practice. But think about if you've been a corporate setting, you've worked for another eye care provider, think about those patients that you absolutely wish that your schedule was completely full of. You know, that patient that shows up on time, that pays sometimes even in advance, that buys multiple pair of glasses, that comes in on an annual basis, that recommends their friends and family, that raves about you on social media, and that leaves a 5-star review for you.
It sounds like a unicorn, Sandi.
It does. But define that unicorn, because you want to attract those unicorns, right? Sure. So if you have several specialties, or, you know, again, this is where you and your staff can really start to brainstorm, but you want to define each one of these ideal patients, you know, define each one into your niches. So in other words, if you do myopia control, one of your ideal patients would be a mom and the child, perhaps. So you have 2 of those right there, and you describe, you know, about them. And I do have a form on my website that I'll send you the link for, that you actually type all of this in, and then you'll get an email that sends you your mock-up of your ideal patient. But it's best to you know, to answer all the questions from a true patient that you have. That makes it easier. But if you don't have enough of those, make one up. And again, as I mentioned, some of those characteristics, of course, they're going to be in your demographics, but everybody in your location is vying for those same patients. And we all know that, you know, it's going to be, if it's just about insurance and it's just about, I'm just going to go to the person up the street that takes my insurance, you're going to be competing with everybody. So you want to define avatars that have very specific specific problems that you're going to be able to solve with your specialties. And even if you don't think you have a specialty, you do. Whether it's the way you have your practice set up, the way that you have your optical set up, the way that your staff treats your patients, the way that they explain all of the added benefits of the eyewear, you are unique and you do have a specialty. So again, make sure that you're writing these down. You start writing some of these keyword phrases that relate to these ideal patients. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. Speaking of writing down, I think I'll take a second here. You know, some people may be moving, driving, walking, running, whatever, while they're listening to this. But if you're not, and you have the chance to type it in your phone or jot down some notes, put some pen to paper, everything Sandi's going through, these are all super actionable things, I think extremely valuable. So take some time to write it all down. If you happen to be driving, then, you know, make some mental notes, but go back and listen again, right? And same goes with the previous episode and then the next episode. There's going to be so many like actionable points. It's really worth writing them down so you can put them into action, right? Knowledge, as they say, is only potential power, right? And it's all about putting it into action. So make sure you write these things down, and I want to hear from everybody after they've put them into action and see what they think and how much value they've actually brought. So please go ahead, Sandi.
Sure. And then don't be afraid to research if you kind of get stuck and you're not sure, because I do have very specific questions to get you thinking about it. Don't be afraid to ask your current patients questions about, you know, how did they hear about you originally? And you really have to dig deep about that. And I know we're going to touch that on another question, but if they just say, well, I saw you online. Well, where did you see me online? Well, I saw you in Google. I saw, you know, you popped up to the top of the first page. Well, what did you type in the search? Did you type best
me
eye
exactly.
doctor in Tampa, or did you type in the doctor's name? Of course, you're going to come up at the top. Or what social media platform? And can you remember the post that we did? So don't be afraid to start taking notes on that and researching where they actually came from. And then, find out from your staff, what are the most frequently asked questions about eye care and eyewear. These start to become some of the ideas for the content that you're going to put out, and write it down again in the language that the staff remembers the patients ask, because you always want to use the same kind of phrases and language that they're using when they ask you. Again, we're so used to just spouting off some of the explanations of things and eyewear and treatment options, but we have to really start thinking about how they're perceiving what we're telling them. And that relates to all the content that we're doing. So ask your patients, ask your staff, and again, put in some of these symptom related phrases. And then one of the notes that I had for myself, so I don't forget, is start typing in these phrases into that Google search bar at the top and see what Google actually serves up for you. So when you start typing things into the Google search field, you see a drop down of a bunch of other phrases that Google is trying to guess what you're actually saying. Mm-hmm. So look at some of those other search phrases, because Google has discovered that those phrases themselves have been used quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So we know that a lot of people are typing those same phrases, and so use those phrases in your content. Okay.
That's a good idea. Very smart.
And it's important to understand the questions that the patients are really asking. What do they really want to have answered? So then we're going to move on to cold versus warm traffic. So any questions
this
about
is something
what
that I'm very, very interested in, is the cold versus the warm. Yep. And I think an important distinction that we need to make, so we know, which bucket or which funnel or whatever it is that we need to be going down.
Right. And that's why we have to understand the language that we're using. And what I'm going to describe to you, you are going to market to all of these phases. And we do use the word funnel in the marketing world, but it's the customer journey. Where are they? Do they even know you? So I'm going to go through some of that. And again, all of this information, I will create a blog post, or I'll send you my notes so that you can actually relay that to your listeners.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
You're met. The reason that, it's important to understand where the potential patients are you want to know where they are in their customer journey. Like I said, where are they? Do they know about you? So here's the phrases that we use. Cold traffic means they've never heard about you. Warm is they're starting to warm up to you. And hot traffic is they're already patients of yours. So the journey is, we start with unaware. These are patients that are unaware of you. They're unaware of any eye care or eyewear problems or products that you may have to help them to, improve the quality of their lives. The next phase is problem aware. They know that they have some sort of an eye issue, but they're not aware of how to fix it. And they may not even be aware of who you are. Or maybe they do know who you are, but they're not aware that you even understand their problems and that you definitely don't have any solutions. Then the next phase in the customer journey is, they're solution aware. These patients are solution aware. They're warming up. They know they have an eye issue. They know they actually understand what might solve their problem, their eyewear problem, but they don't necessarily know that you have the solution for it. And they've probably heard about you. They may have seen you on social media. They're probably not yet a patient, or if they are a patient, they didn't even know that you had this solution for this other problem. And then product aware, they do know who you are. They may be a patient. They probably are a patient of yours. And they do know that you have a solution. So in each one of these places, you're going to market to them differently. The language that you're going to use is very different depending on where they are. So let me start backwards. A product aware patient, they know that you offer a specific pair of golfing glasses. They have a friend that bought something from you and you made a specific type of sunglass, this thing called polarized sunglasses. You might have lowered the sag height for them, or you might have helped Susie, who's at school, who thought they just had, they couldn't keep up with the work. They didn't know what was wrong with them. They weren't even a problem aware. But this other patient heard about it and heard about you, that you had this thing where the patient went through some training and ended up turning from a C student to an A student, but they didn't even know how to articulate the problem that they had. They just thought that, their child wasn't doing well in school. So you have to talk to those potential patients differently than you talk to someone who's in your office and say, oh my gosh, I see this, this point of service display where you're talking about the special solution you have for students that don't do well in school. So at every one of those phases, you have to write your copy and your marketing, all of your content differently. And this is content that you have on your website, content that you have on your blogs, and content that you provide in your social media. And, my advice is you draw from those different buckets every day and decide, whom you want to reach at that particular time, but have all of that content on your website so that you're talking to every phase all the time. So blog posts, just pick one topic, one bucket, and write something in that particular day. And then, when you have time permitting, hit another bucket, hit another problem.
I see. So you're suggesting, let's say we're talking about writing a blog. So one blog would be talking to that person who's completely unaware. And that's the way that you phrase it. That's the type of language you use. And another blog, you'd be talking to someone who who's very well aware of what services you provide and perhaps even uses them. And so you use a whole different level or different type of language. And you know that you're deliberately talking to that person and you are not talking to the other person in that specific setting.
Right.
Because I was wondering, how do I put all of that into one thing, right? So is it possible, let's say I was writing a blog, to hit multiple of those things, like the person who's unaware plus the person who is aware, or is that going to be too much all at once?
I think it's too much all at once because it's how you present it is going to be confusing. If you try to do it to too many of those buckets at once. So let me, an example is, again, going back to, let's go computer vision syndrome. You may have someone they don't even know that they have a problem. They come and, your staff has said to you, here's a frequently asked question. This could be a good piece of content for a blog post. Patients say, I just don't know why my eyes are tired by the end of the day. Versus someone who may have seen something in your office that says, that addresses that mentions that phrase, but also talks about the solution you have and talks about specific glasses for computer vision syndrome. You might not use the words computer vision syndrome until you're, in the exam lane and say, this is what you have and this is how we treat it. But your materials are going to sound very different depending on who you're talking with. So on the blog post to the unaware person, your title might be, are your eyes tired after a long day of working in front of the computer? And then someone who's product aware, that knows they've been through the full exam, and you're touching them with, let's say, an email follow-up, you might say something like, don't forget, we have computer specific eyewear that will address that problem that we discussed. And this wouldn't be necessarily an email marketing blast. It might be a specific email to a patient, or it might be a follow-up if they're coming back for a follow-up appointment. You say, remember, we talked about that computer eyewear. So you always have to think, where are they in the journey when I'm writing my content, my social media? Who is it that I want to hit today? Do I just want to increase my awareness in the community? That I'm going to be very high level. I'm going to bring up problems. I'm going to ask questions that evoke emotions, that bring up a problem that they didn't even know they even had. But now that you mention it, oh my gosh, I do have that problem. I'm exhausted by the end of the day. Could it be my eyes? You might even address, are you exhausted at the end of the day before you even address the eyes?
So, excuse me, if you have something more there, please do add it. But the question that came to my mind that I want to just put out there, I think we're going to address this at some point anyways.
Sure.
That person who's unaware and has never heard of me before, who happens to live in this neighborhood here somewhere, how do I get in front of that person, to even say, are your eyes tired?
Sure. It's going to be in the digital marketing part is going to be one of those things. All of the things that I mentioned about getting aware, whether you're doing service announcements, public announcements, you're getting into the neighborhood newsletter. If there's a neighborhood newsletter, you're doing all of the digital marketing that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, whether it's social media. If that neighbor happens to be a certain age group and they happen to be on Facebook, you're going to be pushing out content. You're going to be pushing out paid advertising because Facebook doesn't like to push anything out unless it's paid. If you're doing from your the practices page on Facebook, your personal account, depending on who you're friends with, they might find out about you if you happen to have friends in common and you're pushing out content versus just personal. And I talk about that with my clients, is make sure that you also have a professional, your account is more professional than just personal. Yeah. And that's a whole other conversation.
We had the first podcast in this series of the March Marketing Madness series here. I had a lovely guest, Kaylee, and Kaylee is actually, that's like her niche is actually Facebook ads. And so she was kind of breaking it down real detailed about organic reach. I think most of us know organic reach on Facebook is almost nothing now. Right. And kind of, she was really going into the depth, and it's like, oh my God, it's like a whole different, you've gone through some kind of warp, time warp, mind warp. It's just too much. So, definitely that's something that we'll want to touch on, but perhaps that's like a whole other conversation in itself.
It is. And, there's, to get back to the foundation, there's two ways that you're going to get noticed. It's going to be either organic or paid. Organic marketing, which is more of what I specialize in, and I would refer to someone like Kaylee for the paid portion. Paid tends to get you quick and fast, and that's what you want to do when you first open up your practice. Besides all of that other stuff, the warm and fuzzy, getting people through your door, and the stuff that we're going to talk about in just a bit, you want to have a paid marketing campaign. And again, understanding the dollars that you have and the amount of money that you really should be spending on those kind of campaigns. And then the organic is more the long-term marketing. It's what sets you up as the expert. The paid gets you the fast, quick awareness. And then in the meantime, you're still doing all the organic marketing so that you can be seen as the expert in your location, in your local demographic, your local community. So you want to be doing both. They definitely feed off of each other, and they serve different purposes. So once you understand that and understand how much money, because it can get pretty expensive pretty quickly. Sure. You just, it's, do I have the time or the money or both or neither? And you have to determine, where you want to spend. Do you want to spend more time or more money? And again, your staff, don't underestimate the value of delegating some of this organic marketing to your staff. And that's a lot of what I do for clients. But let me go into one of the most important things that you can do organically. We're going to now start kicking into the digital aspect of things. It might be fast and furious, but let's go ahead and dive into, what I recommend as part of the organic online marketing that needs to be done.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. So obviously you want to have a website. You must have a presence. I know that there are a lot of marketers out there that say you don't even need a website anymore. Well, you do for an eye care practice. And we'll touch on some things as far as SEO and how to optimize your website to make it clean and to get more patients in the door. But one of the main reasons that you want to have a professional website done well, done professionally, is you need to either create, if you haven't done so already, or claim, if it exists and you don't own it, your Google business profile. And your Google business profile used to be known as Google My Business. So in November, right after I created my course on this, they ended up changing the name. Great. So I kid you not, within a week. So we'll be going back to the drawing board on that. But basically, most of the functionality is the same. There's a few things that they've changed, but it's a non-negotiable. When you open up, it's no longer, you open up your practice, you hang your sign, you hang your shingle, and they will come. It doesn't happen that way. Right. So you have to think about, what are potential patients doing to find an eye care provider? Even if, and this is really important to understand, even if their best friend, their family member recommends you, they are still going to Google you, and they are still going to look for your website, and they're also going to look for your online reviews. And the most common reviews that they're looking at are the Google reviews, and we'll talk about that in a second. So it's really a non-negotiable to either create or claim your Google business profile. And it's very simple. I'll give you the links for that as well. It's just follow the directions in order to do it. And the next thing that you're going to have to do, and before you do this, you're going to start setting up your profile before you verify, because you're going to have to do that because they want to make sure anybody isn't just throwing up a listing that's yours and it's not really you. But you want to put on your website, if your web designer hasn't done this, make sure that your physical practice location or locations are at the bottom of every page of your website, on the footer of your website. Some people neglect this and they forget to do this. And Google is very, very specific about this. They want to make sure that you have your practice address at the bottom of every page of your website.
Okay.
The reason that you're claiming this is anytime someone types in, and I use what a lot of people do, is best eye doctor. I'm going to use my own town, Tampa, best eye doctor in Tampa, or best eye doctor near me, or eye doctor, or best optometrist, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to type that right into Google's search field. You want to be in those top 3 or one of those top 3 listings. It's not going to happen when you first open your practice. So you have to claim this and you have to start creating content. This is the importance of the blog, because Google is going to serve up what they think is the best website when someone types in a search phrase. And most of your patients, and you'll find this out after you teach your staff, train your staff how to find out where patients are finding out about you, but you're going to find out the kind of phrases that they're typing into the search field. Again, typing your name doesn't mean anything. That's a given. It's when they don't know who you are and they're just typing in a generic phrase that you want to show up in the top of that. It's not in the advertising section. It's the next section that has the map, and that's called the 3-pack. That's what we like to call. There's different names for it, but I like to call it the 3-pack. You're going to see right there, you're going to see some sites that are highly optimized and some might not be as optimized as I would recommend, but they're still showing up. Part of that is the age of the domain name that they have. Part of it is how many reviews and how many good reviews and honest reviews that they're getting. That's how they're going to show up at the top. And you want to push to get to the top, because statistics show that I think it's something like 85% of potential customers and patients will go and click on that number 1 and probably make an appointment with that number 1 optometrist. So
it sort of becomes a self-fulfilling thing at that point, right? You're a number 1, so people book with you, so you stay number 1.
Right.
And it just kind of keeps going.
Right. Absolutely. So then you want to verify, and the way to verify it, Google will give you instructions, but the most common way to do it is they'll send you a postcard in about 3 weeks. It'll come to that physical address. They'll have a code on it. You go back into your Google business profile account and just put the code in and you're good to go. You now own your own listing. And there's a whole ton of stuff that you can do because you now own that listing. And again, I go into great detail about that, and I'll send you a link for how to find out about that, of course. So,
okay. So we'll put all these. Sorry, Sandi.
Yes.
We'll put these links into the show notes. So anybody who's listening on a podcast, just kind of look to see what the notes are, and I'll make sure a few of these things that Sandi's talking about will be in there.
Right. So the next thing to really get up to the top of that 3-pack is to make sure that you ask for Google reviews the right way, not the wrong way. And some of the right way used to be right, and now it's wrong. So let me go through some of those that, and I may forget some of them, but there's a lot of information out there about it. And one of the best sources is Google itself. When you go in there and search for how to do Google reviews, the best source to go to is Google itself, because they're going to tell you exactly what they want. And they do change some of their policies, but let me go through quickly some of these. You can no longer incentivize reviews. And somehow I treat Google as though it were a person, and it's a very smart person. It's like the smartest librarian you'll ever want to meet. Somehow they can tell whether or not you've incentivized. Obviously, you don't want to post it on your site that you're incentivizing it, but you don't even want to do it in office. It's a huge no-no for Google. They used to allow it, but they don't anymore. This is one that most of
Sandi,
my clients, go ahead.
Sorry, I know it's funny. Sorry to interrupt you, but
No, it's okay.
It's funny we say somehow Google knows, but also somehow Google knows that I talked about buying golf shoes the other day.
Yes.
And start serving up ads. So somehow it's not all that surprising that they know, but go on.
Right. And that's going to change. What you're talking about is targeted and retargeting. And as we all know, this is where, and your last guest may have mentioned this, but it's gotten a lot tougher for Facebook to retarget because of Apple's latest update. And that is they are basically cutting off the ability to retarget.
She did.
So
Oh, that's interesting. She did actually
yeah,
reference that. Very
yeah,
okay. That kind of
yeah.
flips
And
that
that's what it is, that scary thing that you go and search somewhere else online and all of a sudden it's popping up on Facebook, or you're searching on Facebook and pops up on Google. That's what it's called. It's called retargeting. And it's basically some code that gets dropped onto a website that can be traced back to your searching, in simple terms, your searching history. That's being stopped. That's the question that Apple is asking every time. I think it's either in an app, and are you going to allow the app to be able to follow you around the internet? And most people are saying no. So that's where that retargeting has stopped.
Is that why Meta's stock dropped so much? I mean, I'm just, never mind. My
Yes.
brain's
Well,
gone.
it is. No, it
Really?
is. It,
Okay.
it absolutely is. In fact, there's
Okay.
an article that just came out about that. So
Oh, interesting. Okay.
it's amazing how much the stock dropped. And there's an interesting article that talks about they're rewinding and they're going back to doing really in a different way that you and I are talking about video, but they're going back to, they see, I think TikTok is one of their biggest competitors. So they're trying to get back into doing the reels and all of that, even on Facebook. But anyway, so for the reviews,
on
let's
a
get back to
tangent there a
that.
little bit.
It's okay. This is all, we love this stuff.
Yeah.
This is the one that a lot of people don't understand. Do not let your patients review you from your office. Oh, how easy would that be to have? And you want to have this, you want to have the QR codes in your office, and we can go to detail about what that is, but have those point of service flyers everywhere in your office, in the exam lane, everywhere, that basically they just take their phone out and hit. I think now you can just hit the photo button and it'll bring up the website, take them directly to the reviews page. But you don't want them reviewing you right in the office, because Google will penalize you if too many reviews come from the same either IP address. So if they're on your Wi-Fi, but I think it's also the cell tower that might be close. I'm not real good about that tech, but Google again knows that if too many reviews are coming from the same IP, they're going to think that it's either someone is spamming you and giving you bad reviews because you're a competitor, or you're begging a lot of people to review you. So it looks like maybe your staff is reviewing you, and, your friends and your family, and they're all doing it from your office. So Google kind of got smart about that and said, no. They may even, if you do that and oh shoot, I forgot I'm not supposed to do this, they can actually go back to older reviews that you now have. They can actually remove them.
Wow.
So yeah, there are a lot of folks that, oh my gosh, I just lost 100 reviews and they were all legitimate. What's going on? It can be because of behavior that you're doing moving forward. So they can actually go back and remove those.
That seems oddly punitive. Like, it seems normal to me that someone might want to review the experience that they've had here.
Right.
Maybe they're waiting for the optician to finish something with their glasses. While they're sitting there, they leave a review. That just seems normal.
It does.
So it's strange to me that that's punished. But
I think it's for that reason that I mentioned. I think they thought that, number one, they're actually protecting you as a business owner, because the competitor can just get all of their staff. And if they have a huge office, all of these people could possibly be reviewing you from that office. So someone giving a lot of bad reviews from one IP, obviously it's a competitor. But again, for Google to police this, that's an awful lot of reviews that they're going to have to pay attention to. So I think they just across the board said, no, we're getting too many disingenuous reviews coming in. So an easy way to stop that is if you're getting a lot of reviews from one location.
Wow. So that's that's one that I was surprised to hear.
Yep.
So it's fine to have the QR codes. We have it at the front desk, but don't ask people to leave you a review right there and then. It's better that they go home and do it.
And just have your staff just write out a phrase, something like, what, Mrs. Jones, I would love for you to review us. Go ahead and grab the link, but, from the comfort of your own home, when when you've gotten your new eyewear, whatever, just come up with some really, sweet phrase that's honest, that's real. Because sometimes patients might feel pressured if they're doing it right then and there. And if they're being dilated, it might be difficult for them. You don't want to have a lot of typos in your review. But just somehow phrase it so that they feel like they're doing it in the comfort of their own home. But go ahead and pick up the QR code, or have plenty of handouts where you hand them as they're leaving, hand them the QR code page so that they can do it when they go home. So have it with some of the paperwork that you're giving them. and it makes it, a really neat way to do it. And then another factor about getting reviews is you must start slowly. If you get too many reviews too quickly, so this is really important for new practice owners, don't out of the gate, make sure that every single patient is reviewing you. Certainly ask them, certainly get them to do it, but try not to put too much pressure, because if you get too many reviews, all of a sudden, Google is also going to think that you're doing it incorrectly. You're getting all your friends and family to review you, and they just don't look at that as an authentic review. So do it organically, just on a regular basis. Ask your patients. We'd appreciate it, because you're only going to get 5 to 10% of those patients to review you anyway. So this is not the time to ask all of your friends and family to review you, unless you're just not getting any reviews.
So on a sort of the thought that came to mind is, what if I sent out an email to patients, like we just
Absolutely.
sent an email blast, and we said, hey, we'd love for you to give us a Google review, and by chance a large proportion of them did, would that all of a sudden be looked at as
It
some
would
sort
be.
of negative? Oh, really?
It actually would be. I would still recommend that you do that, but maybe if you're doing an email blast, do them if you know that part of your call to action is going to be to get them to review you, or if the topic of that email blast is going to be to get them to review you, do them in chunks. Do them, a chunk at a time. Maybe send out 100 at a time or 50 at a time, so that you're not getting an overwhelming large number. But don't forget, and we all know this in marketing, that the reality of how many people actually open their emails, because we're all getting inundated with emails.
Yeah.
You may not get as many as you think you would. So I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Yeah, I meant that as a hypothetical, sort of like if potentially a bunch of,
Sure.
we did something to incite that, like a bunch of people
Sure.
reviewed us. Sorry,
And
what's next?
No, and that's okay, because that's a really good question, because I do recommend that you do that, but do it sort of in these little batches. And another way to do it too, this is one of those really nice, warm and fuzzy offline things. If you do get in the habit of thanking patients either for a referral or for something specific, or if you're thanking all of your patients in the beginning and you're handwriting note cards, because, oh my gosh, don't we love to get handwritten note cards now, because we're tired of emails, is to put the QR code either on the back of the card or at the bottom of the card, so that they can easily do it then. And that's going to be a much more organic way of doing it. So I would highly recommend that. I'm going to recommend a book, and I'll certainly send you the name as well. But there's a book written by a dentist who absolutely nails how to get reviews appropriately. And we do know probably one of our closest healthcare colleagues are dentists. And the name of the book is called Raving Patients: The Definitive Guide to Using Reputation Marketing to Attract Hundreds of New Patients. And he's actually come out with a software that is incredible. I've been researching it. I haven't used it myself, but I am incredibly impressed with it, and I'll send you that information as well.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
I'm hoping to get him on one of my interview shows as well. But his name is Dr. Len Tau, Tau. And the book is amazing, absolutely amazing, because it goes into much more than just, let's get a few reviews. It's talking about reputation marketing, and what to do, what to handle when you don't have a good review.
And I feel like dentists in general have a pretty good grasp
They do.
on how to market.
Absolutely.
We could all probably learn something from them.
Yeah. Yeah. And he talks about, and this comes with how to really treat your patients well, is to try to get reviews that are much more in depth. In other words, might name a staff member, might say more than, hey, Dr. Cyan is really wonderful. They actually go into, I love the way that he explains how my computer glasses are going to work to alleviate my pain, blah, blah, blah. So, there are ways that you can kind of get that to do that. And, one of the caveats, of course, make sure that whether you're, in the US with HIPAA or other countries that have privacy laws, make sure that you're well-versed in how you're supposed to respond to reviews, because both on your social media channels, when you're, even if someone tags you, you have to be very careful about saying anything in a comment to that patient, because it could be violating HIPAA laws. I've heard some pretty in-depth information about that. So you have to be very careful in how you respond to a review, whether it's positive or negative, and how you respond to someone who tags you on social media, or who brags about you, gives you a testimonial.
Yeah, last thing you want to do is go to jail for saying thanks to somebody leaving a positive review.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
I know
Absolutely.
I'm
And
laughing, but it's actually true, unfortunately.
well, and he actually talks about that in the book about, I think it's a dentist, that it was horrific the amount of money that he was sued for and lost.
Oh my God.
So it's, yeah, it's, you really have to pay attention to that. And doctors just don't realize it. And staff who might be doing the social media, oh, sure, this is great.
Oh
And,
yeah.
we're so glad you love your computer vision glasses. And ooh, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
So,
And it'll
but
work
that's it
perfectly
for,
with that medication that you're taking. And
right, right. It's just so easy. It's just, oh, you're trying to be helpful and valuable and offer value, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So, but that's kind of in a nutshell some of the basic. I know you had some more questions for me that will help us, dive into it a little bit more. So, if you
Yeah,
want to
I think the
talk
key
about this.
topic, for us to kind of touch on, I mean, honestly, really, I think what you've given us here is massive. It's almost like a full-on playbook. And I know this is the key. And I know when I say marketing madness, again, our mind goes to digital marketing, but we really
Right.
have to think about the more traditional, more, interpersonal type of networking that we can still do, even with COVID and everything. That's going to really help us get those warm and fuzzies,
Sure.
as well as the digital stuff. And the nice thing is, with all the guests that I will have coming on, each one has their sort of area of expertise within this marketing world. And I love that, I know you talk a lot about Google. So I wondered if you could talk to me a little bit more about Google Ads. One of the comments on that social media post that I put up about, asking people, what do you want to learn more about, was Google Ads. And
Sure.
I'm wondering if you could just tell me a little bit, maybe Google Ads 101. We set up our Google My Business, or Google, whatever it's called now, page. What are some key, 2 or 3 things I need to know if I'm going to be running Google Ads?
Well, the big thing is hire somebody that really knows what they're doing.
Okay, step one.
Step one, and I'm probably, as far as the technical about this, I'm the last person you want to ask, because I'm not well versed in the actual ads portion of things, the paid ads. That's where I'm all about organic and networking. But let me give you, because I all things marketing. Definitely. And I know that you're going to be interviewing, I can say that right, marketing for ECPs, and they do a really good job. They know it to an incredible depth. In fact, I just saw a post on LinkedIn that they have been awarded an incredible honor by Google because of their knowledge on all things Google advertising. It's a very difficult, I think it was something like only the top 3% of marketers have this honor. So you will probably be talking to either Trudy or one of her folks from marketing for ECPs about this. But I would send you to someone like her and say, you absolutely cannot or should not do this on your own, because one of the big things that happens is you will spend way more money that is way less effective than you ever could imagine, because you can go down a rabbit hole of thinking you're doing the right thing and you're not. It's very easy to quickly spend money on Google Ads because of the way that Google Ads work. And one of the things that I was really impressed with Trudy's crew is that they taught me something about how many keyword phrases they actually go after. Most do-it-yourselfers will go after maybe 9 or 10 keyword phrases. They're doing something like 50 to 100. So they know how to optimize for each one of those keyword phrases. And this is where you'll really shine, because if you have a niche or niche, you have a subspecialty, they're going to be able to attract customers with their ads, or patients with those ads, because they know how to target that with Google Ads. So that's probably my biggest take home, is don't try to do it yourself. Make sure that you understand your ideal patient, because your marketing agency is going to ask you for that. They're going to work through that with you, and know your niche, know your subspecialties and how they fix the problems that your patients are looking to solve.
That's a great answer, Sandi. I know that when we talked offline, I know that you were saying that the paid ads is not your area of expertise, and so to speak. I know you understand it well, but I asked you that, and the answer, your answer actually was perfect, and that's kind of what I was getting at, and wanting to get at eventually. And I know that's again what Kaylee was talking about just previously about Facebook ads.
Yeah.
Is like eventually you, or maybe right away, you got to just talk to an expert. And I would love, to tell my friends and my colleagues and my, fellow business owners that we can just go ahead and succeed at this ourselves. But I'll tell you from my own experience, you may as well just throw the money away. Sometimes
Right.
it feels like a kind of a waste and a bit of a loss. So
Right.
it's in our best interest to probably speak to the experts on that one.
Well, it is. Let me give you one more one more tidbit is understand that and they will tell you this as well, the marketing agencies. Understand that if you are going to go with paid advertising, you're going to need to have a decent budget for it because they too, with all their expertise, understand that it is a test kind of platform. So they just know how to get there quicker. But your first ads probably will not be successful.
But that's it. And again, going back to the previous episode, Kaylee was saying, echoing some of the same things that you're saying here. So I think it's really nice to know even people in different worlds, different realms, echoing the same kind of message, right? So there's, it's nice to have that. And I think that's a perfect place for us to leave it, Sandi, because it kind of leads into the next conversation, because the next episode will be with marketing for ECP. So I think that's perfect that you sort of teed it up perfectly for them. I'm sure they'll thank you for that. Before we do wrap up though, first of all, where can people find you? Where can we connect with you if we want to learn more about this stuff?
Sure. I appreciate that. I hang out on LinkedIn. I know you know that. That's where you'll see me doing a lot of different postings. Feel free to DM me through there. I would love for you to check out my website, drsandieveleth.com. I do have a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I'm spending, I'm saying that I'm doing it monthly, but I will be doing it more often. And then I do live broadcasts. I interview a lot of greats in our industry that have to do with growing your practice. So really, you'll find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Sandi Eveleth. Go ahead and just search for it. I think I'm the only one in the world, or if I'm not, there's only one other. So, but yeah, you'll find me over there. And I just love, putting content, and please follow and connect. Send me a connection request. You can find it's a little tricky because I'm in creator mode. So you think you can only follow me, but hit the 3 dots and then go ahead and hit the connect button.
Yeah. And send a message, right? Say hello. I think
absolutely.
That's kind of
please DM me. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So make sure you guys do connect with Sandi, even if you're not an optometrist or an optician or whatever. As you can tell, like so much of this information transcends like the professional boundaries, right? It's just across the board. It's valuable for everybody. So thank you, Sandi. And any final words of wisdom you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
There are. I want to congratulate you, my friend, on doing a phenomenal job in what we call personal branding. So I hope all of your listeners and viewers check you out in all of your platforms, and especially congratulations for your TEDx talk. That is absolutely amazing. What you're doing for our profession is profound, and I appreciate it. I understand, as you know, marketing, all aspects of it, and you have done a phenomenal job of personal branding. And that's a whole other topic that hopefully we can talk about in the future, or one of your other guests will talk about, because we can no longer avoid that topic. We absolutely have to put ourselves out there. So kudos to you for doing a phenomenal job, and for this podcast. You're doing just amazing for our
Thank
profession.
You so much, Sandi. That means really does mean so much coming from you. Thank you so much. And I have to give so much credit to yourself and other leaders in the industry like yourself who've kind of paved the way even before I knew what personal branding was. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you again for coming on the podcast and sharing all this amazing insight. And thank you everybody who tuned in, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever, or if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks again for all the support. Don't forget to take a screenshot, throw it up on Instagram, hit share, hit like, hit subscribe, do all the good stuff. And I will see you in the next March Marketing Madness episode next week. Take care, guys.